Welcome into the Lucas podcast. Lucas Frankel alongside Mike Lucas. Mike, it's the day we've all been waiting for. The Giants have a new general manager. His name is Joe Schoen, formerly of the Buffalo Bills. What are your thoughts on this brand new hire for the New York Football Giants as they move on from the amazing Dave Gettleman tenure?
I think it's a tremendous win for the Giants as an organization. I liked all three of their finalists. You look at the teams where they came from. You have the Chiefs, the Bills, and the 49ers, three teams that are loaded with talent who have done well, not only in the draft, but in free agency as well, evaluating guys who may not be the top tier targets on the free agent market, but have been able to bring in guys who came in underneath as mid-level guys and contributed immediately. But most importantly, I like this hire because I believe it makes the Giants the front runner to hire Brian Daboll as head coach, who has been my number one target. Him and Brian Flores, my top two targets. The entire process, it never seemed like Flores was the right fit for the Giants. But with Daboll and Schoen working together in Buffalo, I have to imagine that he'll at least get a little more consideration now for the head coaching position of the Giants. And after seeing the last 4 seasons of Joe Judge, of Pat Shurmur, and this anemic offensive philosophy from a creativity standpoint, from a production standpoint, you look at what the Bills did last week against New England. Literally a perfect offensive showing, and what Brian Daboll has been able to do with Josh Allen throughout the course of his career so far, transforming him from an inaccurate quarterback and a guy who people thought had massive bust potential into a potential MVP candidate. That is what I think the Giants needed. I'm ecstatic, and I hope we got one Buffalo Bill. I hope we circle the wagons and get another Buffalo Bill, and Brian Daboll is the future head coach of the New York Football Giants.
This is so classic, just NFL. Over the course of my football watching life, the way this has worked is teams poach coaches, assistants, executives from teams that are doing well at the moment. We've seen this with obviously the multitude of executives and coaches from Bill Belichick's staff with the New England Patriots. We've seen this with, the Kansas City Chiefs and Andy Reid's coaching tree. We've seen this now. Teams are starting to look at, look what the Buffalo Bills are doing. Look at Josh Allen. But here's the reality situation. Until the Giants get a quarterback, it doesn't matter who's calling the shots. Because
it's true.
It's just going to be a rotating cycle because teams lose patience. And when it gets to a point where, you're 2-3 years down the line and you're, 500, hovering around 500, below 500, and you still don't have a quarterback, guess what? They're going to fire the coach. They're going to fire the GM. And so the biggest thing that this guy Shane's got to figure out for himself is the quarterback situation. And if I were him, and hopefully he's got the 2 cents to realize this, is that Daniel Jones is not the answer. You need to make the decision immediately to move on from him. The only reason or only potential scenario I can see them sticking with Daniel Jones is if he wants to give him one more year to buy himself more time. Because if you stick with him the 1 year, it's like kind of a throwaway year. All right, it was kind of like, you really can't put that on me. It's on the quarterback. Now let me bring in my quarterback and really get this ship going. So I anticipate the Giants probably sticking with Daniel Jones 1 more year. I would not do that. I would go balls to the walls and get Russell Wilson. If I were the Jets and the Giants, that would be my number one offseason priority. Because I don't think Zach Wilson is the answer for the Jets. And I know for a fact Daniel Jones is not the answer for the Giants. So I would do everything in my power. Giants have all the draft capital in the world to go get a Russell Wilson. So if I were the Jets, and especially the Giants, that'd be my number one priority right now. Go get me a primetime quarterback.
I agree. The quarterback's the most important position in sports. Without it, it is so difficult to win no matter how well the rest of your roster is constructed. And one thing with Shane is he was an integral part of the Bills front office that evaluated Josh Allen coming out of that draft and took him over some other quarterbacks who were highly regarded. That was the draft with 5 first-round picks at the quarterback position. Allen was the 3rd of the 5 taken, meaning he was taken before guys like Josh Rosen and Lamar Jackson. Rosen barely in the league anymore. Jackson, he won MVP, but are you sure you'd want him as the guy leading your franchise? And it looks like Allen might be the best of the 5. I mean, already he's clearly the best of the 5. And there's nothing that makes me think, hey, he's going to fall out of that category. So Shane does have a proven track record at evaluating the traits that would lead a prospect to becoming a prominent quarterback in the NFL. It's a total crapshoot. Every year it changes. And I think with this new front office, I would like to see them stick with Daniel Jones for 1 more year, just because A, he's under contract already, and B, if you don't think any of the guys in the draft are an upgrade already, improve your line, improve other positions, and then go get a quarterback when it's more applicable to do so, instead of just using these 2 picks on, a guy who may not be valued at that position. We saw the Giants reach on Daniel Jones. They took him 6th overall when most people had him going late in the first round, early second round. And if that's your guy, then I have no problem taking him there. But I don't think it's worth, quote unquote, punting on a top 7 draft pick for a quarterback who you can either A, trade down and get later, and is B, not necessarily an immediate upgrade over Daniel Jones, which none of the quarterbacks in this draft seem to be home run hits. So if I was them, I'd just rather be patient, give Shane and these guys a total cycle to evaluate the quarterback class. You have CJ Stroud next year. You'll have Bryce Young next year. There's a lot of quarterbacks, so I like a lot more than the quarterback class this season coming out. And I'd rather stick with Daniel Jones. And honestly, if your goal is to get a quarterback next season, Jones is a pretty good tanking effort behind center to get a high draft pick next year. Because I'm with you. I don't think he's a bust. I think he's unproven, but I also don't think he's a surefire home run by any means either.
So I just saw this come across. The Carolina Panthers have hired Ben McAdoo as their offensive coordinator. So McAtack is back in the league, calling plays for whoever's going to be calling the shots for or playing quarterback for the Panthers next season. Most likely the great Sam Darnold,
He was in that draft class. He was in that draft class.
Was also in that. Was it with Jones? No, Jones was
Jones was the year after.
Right, he was the year after.
Saquon was the pick in that draft class.
Right, Saquon was number 2 pick, and obviously like this guy Shane's his whole trajectory changed by the drafting of Josh Allen. So
yeah,
it's just like it's so hard to say whether like it's a great hire, it's a bad hire. Like this guy, he made his career off of Josh Allen, just like so many guys before him like made their careers off Bill Belichick with Tom Brady, and so.
And just for the record, we won't be able to truly evaluate any of these hires for 5 years. That's what we'll know. And it's impossible.
Assuming he even lasts, most coaches don't even last that long. So we'll see how it goes here. Moral of the story here with the Giants, they got to figure out the quarterback situation. If they can do that, then they'll be golden. If not, then in 2 or 3 years, we'll be doing the same process again, just like the Jets. And that's how the NFL goes these days. There's no patience. And that's all we got to say about that. But let's move on to the Brooklyn Nets. Mike, it wasn't a nationally televised game, thank God, but it was a complete roller coaster ride against the Wizards on Wednesday night. They were up by 16. They almost blew it. They probably should have blown it. Kyle Kuzma had a wide open look at a 3 to win it. Then the ball came right to Spencer Dinwiddie. If he hit that shot to beat the Nets, that would have just – I feel like the Nets it felt like they would have never recovered from that game. But they held on. The assistant coach did what he had to do. He stuck his hand out, deflected the ball. Nets got the steal. And you know what? And I'll toss it to you. I just want to make this quick point about the Vanderbilt thing. There was a play earlier in that game, I think in the late third, early fourth quarter, where I think Denny Avdia just like completely extended the arm on Patty Mills. Patty Mills went flying. It was a clear shove, and they didn't call nothing. They didn't call it. And then they went on to hit the 3, and that was 3 points there. So like all the Wizards fans, Kyle Kuzma, are so fixated on that call screwed the Wizards. But like you watch that game, James Harden got clocked in the head with an elbow, no call. Like to place so much focus and attention on that one play. Yes, it shouldn't have happened, and it should have been illegal, and the refs should have recognized it or should have been reviewed or something. But to just be like, oh, the Wizards got screwed and the Nets didn't get, and the Nets got every single call, like that. That's just not how it happened at all. So I applaud Vanderpool. And I'm happy he did that play, and that's where I stand on the matter.
Yeah, one play either way doesn't impact the outcome of a game. It comes down to 48 minutes of basketball, and even you look at like the Saints game a couple of years ago against the Rams and that terrible pass interference call, like they missed a field goal earlier in the game that would have changed the trajectory. Despite Vanderpool reaching his hand out and deflecting the ball, Kuzma still had an open look for 3 at the buzzer to win, and he missed it. So it's not like that was the play that somehow led the Nets to go score and take the lead. The Wizards still had a chance to come back. They missed 2 shots at the buzzer. That's basketball. Is it unfortunate for Washington? Yeah. The assistant coach reached his hand into play, deflected a ball, and that's got to steal off it. It was unreviewable, so the play counted and continued as if nothing had happened. But the truth of the matter is the Wizards, to an extent, did get screwed, and guess what? I don't care. The Nets won. They needed that win. Good for them.
And literally in the worst possible way, because every win sort of counts as like 3 days closer to Durant returning, because you have like the day of the game, like the next day is an off day usually, and then the next day after that is probably another game day. But just trying to like tread water here until Durant comes back. Harden was really, really up and down in that game. We're still hearing the reports about Daryl Morey and the Sixers and Mark Stein, that this constant thing, and like it's crazy the roller coaster of a season it's been for me and Harden. Like I've been to the point where like the Nets cannot let him go under any circumstance, to like where, you know what, thank God we haven't extended him yet because he is a complete catastrophe this year. And then I saw the way he played against the Wizards the other night, 7-21, 9 assists, 8 rebounds. And like, those are like really, really like solid numbers. But, James Harden, like without Durant, it should be like 35, 15, and 10 every game for that guy. Like, there's no reason why he shouldn't be going out there and just running amok every single game. So I'm still really torn about Harden. Obviously, Bill Simmons is constantly spewing he's out of shape, but he's not out of shape. Look at his arms. Look at his legs. Like, obviously, he's got a little bit of a gut, maybe a little bit of a belly, slightly. I haven't seen his like stomach. I'm sure he has a six-pack, but I don't know what it is with James Harden, because he is clearly thicker than he was 3 years ago, 2 years ago in Houston. Like, undoubtedly, he's thicker. I don't know if it's bulkier or what the right word is, but he is not like fat. He's not like this guy who's running around there like, Zion Williamson, like chugging Cokes and eating donuts every day. That's not James Harden.
Well, James Harden may not be chugging Cokes and eating donuts. He does like to, or at least reportedly likes to delve into some late night buffets at certain establishments, and we'll leave it at that.
He's a late night buffet guy?
I've heard from a couple
even
people.
During those things are still around during COVID?
Well, he may like a strip club or two. Let's just put it that way. He's a big strip
club.
Well,
that's a little different than like, eating, 8, what are they called? The McDonald's.
A McRib?
No, not McRib.
McNugget?
No, the Big Macs.
Big Macs? Yeah. But I mean, strip clubs oftentimes have whatever. Like, right. I don't think. Is James Harden in elite shape? No. Is he fat? No. He's somewhere in the middle. And
but look at his arm. Look at his legs. He is cut.
Yeah, but he's put on weight, and you could put on weight and still be in shape. Like, those two things don't have to go hand in hand, and they don't have to be completely separate. Like, Shaq wasn't fat, but Shaq also wasn't ripped out of his mind. Shaq was just a bigger dude. He carried weight. Look at the difference in a guy like Jaylen Brown and Paul Pierce. They're about the same size. They weigh about the same. Jaylen Brown looks like he's chiseled out of marble, and Paul Pierce looked like a human filled with toothpaste. He just wasn't very defined, and he was a Hall of Fame caliber player in his own right, and Jaylen Brown's really, really good. Some people's bodies just are different, and not everyone's going to be 6'8", 220 pounds and look exactly the same. So James Harden, at this point of his career, just doesn't carry his weight the same way he once did. And maybe that just the accumulation in the midsection, which makes him look a little chubbier on screen. He's not fat. He's clearly strong as an ox still. He just carries his weight a little funky. But the one thing, weight aside, and maybe it's weight related, but I don't necessarily think it has to be, he's not as explosive as he once was. And that's the thing that jumps off the screen to me. And Simmons mentioned this on his podcast this week, that his ability to still put up numbers despite being less explosive is impressive. But I think it's the transformation and evolution of his game to where he now knows he can pick and choose certain spots to go, when to pull back, when to facilitate, when to score. But his capability of getting to the cup and scoring like we once saw James Harden do, even as recently as last year, isn't the same. He's not getting past defenders at the same rate he was before his hamstring injury last year. Like that is still evidently clear to me, whether he's fat, out of shape, whatever. He's just not getting by guys as easily as he did one season ago. And that's the concern to me more than anything else.
So we'll see how it goes. I've seen people make the argument about, once the playoffs start, he'll turn it on again. I don't know if he's pacing himself, but we're 3 months into the season here. Like, I don't know. Well, it's just one of those day-to-day things. I was there on Saturday when Durant got hurt. Blame me for that. But he was at the peak of his powers in that game. I think he had like 28 points, like 15 assists or 16 assists, and he was, had complete command of that game. And when Durant went down and there was no Kyrie, he just kept that, train rolling right along schedule. And it was a masterclass. The Wizards game was not, but I guess that's what this season's just going to be like for James Harden. Moving on to Kyrie Irving, remains steadfast against getting the vaccine. I was foolish enough to believe that him being in the building, being around Nash, being around Durant on a day-to-day basis would maybe potentially, I'm a sucker, would change his thinking process. Obviously, it did not. But I just got to say this. The hypocrisy of the current rules where an unvaccinated player could play in Barclays Center, but an unvaccinated home player cannot is just one of the most illogical things that I've ever seen in my time watching sports. Like, yep. What are we doing? Why can't an unvaccinated road player just come in and do whatever they want, but Kyrie Irving, who just happens to live in the city, cannot do it? It makes zero sense. And the fact that the NBA is supposedly steadfast. The New York City is steadfast in not fixing this rule or updating the rule. Like, this has to change. This cannot. And obviously, it only affects one player in the whole league, but I don't care. The rule needs to change so Kyrie Irving can play home games. Because I had Omicron, it is a sore throat, or at least for me it was. And I'm not getting the whole politics of how Omicron and COVID, whatnot, but like just let the dude play at home games. Like I know that there's going to be a million people killing the Nets and killing the city for like, how could you give it to Kyrie Irving? But here's the reality of the situation. The rule is hypocritical. If it were if you have to be vaccinated period to play in New York City, then yes, I would be much more willing to accept that. But the hypocrisy of it all is where you lose me. It needs to change, and it needs to change now because it makes no sense.
Okay, how's this for a theory? What if the Nets just buy Kyrie Irving like a studio apartment in Hoboken? Because then he doesn't technically live in New York. Would he be considered a road player?
No.
Because I thought it was only you couldn't play if you lived in the state. Like if you lived in that state.
He lives in New Jersey. I believe he's in West Orange, New Jersey right now.
Oh, well then maybe not. That was my get around. Like, yeah, it is dumb. The hypocrisy is ridiculous. It makes no sense that Andrew Wiggins can play in Barclays and Madison Square Garden, but Kyrie can't. And I guess if Kyrie can't move to New Jersey, like, yeah, either get the shot Kyrie or change the rules.
Well, he's not getting a shot. He was adamant again.
I know. I'm just saying that is the fix right there. Like,
I just want someone to explain to me how this is a logical thing.
It's not.
What's the logic behind it?
It's not.
And the fact that there's this bureaucratic bullcrap of whoever's making this decision, this is the right, like, either you will, if you're so steadfast against unvaccinated players, playing in your city, then make it a rule for everybody. Make it everywhere. Make it a society where you have to make it a law. And every day you don't get vaccinated, you have to pay a fine. Like, if you're so serious about it, then do that. But don't create this bullcrap where, one day that other people can't do things, some people can, some people can't, and I just can't stand it anymore. And I really want this stupid thing to end. And I can't believe that the Nets are going to get screwed out over a title because of the most hypocritical rule in the history of professional sports.
I have no retort because it is the most hypocritical rule in recent sports memory. Maybe.
So Bill Simmons, as you mentioned earlier, in his latest podcast, or the one on Wednesday, opened his show going on for 40 minutes about how Kevin Durant is the unluckiest superstar in the history of the NBA, how Steve Nash is cursed and will never make it to the NBA Finals. He also had Raja Bell on, one of Steve Nash's close friends from their dates with the Phoenix Suns, and Raja Bell actually turned down an offer from Steve Nash to be on his staff in some capacity, an assistant coach or a scout or some sort of somewhere on his staff. And he said it was the best decision he ever made just because of all the Kyrie drama, the inability to get the guys on the court together. And I found it to be just a very unnerving 40 minutes. What really bothered me, and what Raja did call him out on, was the fact that Simmons said that Durant's injury was because of wear and tear, which was just such, like, at least I had an
issue with that too. I had an issue with that too. It was a freak accident. And yeah. I think Bell did a good job corralling Simmons in and saying, hey, if it wasn't now, it may have been later, because I do agree with the notion that he was playing too many minutes. But to say how he got hurt on a freak play like that, where his own teammate fell into his knee, was the result of him playing too many minutes. Like, that could have happened in the first minute of the first game, and he was just standing in the wrong spot at the wrong time. I did not like that take from Simmons, who I do tend to agree with on a lot of his basketball takes. I thought that one was out of bounds and kind of uncalled for. But I do think, in a way, Durant missing a few weeks here and getting him back 100% fully rested and healthy for the playoffs might be, in the long run, kind of a blessing.
That's what I was thinking too. But here's the reality, Mike. When he does come back, I was actually talking to Frank Isola in my work building, and he said on Wednesday he'll be back in 3 weeks. Take that for what you wish. I think that's probably going to play conservatively. I expect him to be back probably the first game after the All-Star break. I'm not sure who that is or what it is, but either way. So when he does come back and the Nets continue their schedule of 3 games and 5 nights, like, the Nets aren't going to just be like, all right, he had his 4 weeks of rest, so we're playing him every game 35, 40 minutes a game. Like, they're going to keep operating under the same thing, and it's not, and his playing regimen's not going to change. They're going to continue resting him like they have been, and maybe in the long run it will be good. But I don't think they're going to rest him less or alter his rotation at all after he comes back.
No, but getting 3 weeks off takes 3 weeks of him playing 45 minutes a game off the wear and tear of his legs as the Nets get ready for a playoff push. That's the only difference. And yeah, do I think Kevin Durant in theory could have played 45 minutes, 78 games this season into the postseason, carried the offensive load for the Nets and been that constant factor that led them to the 1 or the 2 seed in the East and hopefully a championship? Yeah, because I think he's one of the 6, 7, 8 best players of all time. I think he's that good and that special. Do I think that's a dangerous line to walk? Yeah. I mean, you see LeBron, who's been invincible his whole career recently. Once he's passed that certain minute plateau, he's been a little less Superman and more human-like than we've ever seen him before. These guys who are so good and have been playing for so long, there is a wear and tear it takes on your body, and eventually a little knick-knack that may not have affected you 10 years ago becomes a minor injury, and a minor injury that wouldn't have affected you a couple of years ago becomes a major injury. And Durant, luck, whatever you want to call it, got hit in the knee. It could have been a torn ACL or whatever. And I think had he torn his ACL there, then yes, Simmons saying he's the most unlucky superstar ever would have been more justified. But I think the rest of his case made a lot of sense. And I do think that Durant, being the freak athlete he is, was why he was able to avoid catastrophic knee injury and just a minor knee sprain. I mean, so that comes down to Durant. Yeah. Just being.
So in the moment in the arena, I couldn't see exactly. I thought he just banged knees in real time. Obviously, I wasn't the best angle of that, but I saw Durant like limping. It looked like
where were you saying?
So I was saying the opposite end of the court.
Okay.
Other like basically like parallel to the other basket. So complete other side of the court. I saw Durant like kind of like limping a little bit, like hobbling. I thought he was just like shaking it off, and then all of a sudden he leaves the game and goes straight to the locker room. It sounded like he like sat on the bench for like a second to like regroup. It was all right. I'm going right to the locker room, which was very unnerving at the moment and kind of ruined the enthusiasm of the night because I was pretty pumped up and very excited. Durant was on fire to start that game.
He's so good. It's not fair.
Yeah, and I took the video obviously of him in warm-ups where he literally goes out there and doesn't miss. It's unbelievable. I literally just started recording and I was like, and I just went for as long as I could. And
do you try to talk to him?
No, I couldn't get close enough. He probably wouldn't respond. There were so many people like around that area to hey Kevin, like it wouldn't have come to fruition. But as I mentioned in the first game I went to this season against the Cavs in November, I screamed at Durant when the arena was silent, and he sort of like made eye contact with me in that regard.
The reason I ask is of all the players who I think during warmups would respond and or at least acknowledge your voice in a lauded crowd is probably KD, who seems to take a certain pleasure in interacting with fans in a good and bad way. So I would have loved to see you versus Durant is like Stephen A versus Skip. That's a matchup I'd love to see on a debate table.
Yeah, if I was able to get like basically on the court, like right there, so there was no way he could like ignore me, then yeah, I would have definitely pursued it. The one guy I was seeking out was Joe Harris, because I'm just so sick. I can't believe it's taking him.
What would you tell Joe Harris? Like, what would you actually say to Joe Harris?
Joe, how you feeling, man? What's taking so long? Like, why is it taking you 8 months to come back from a sprained ankle, an injury that takes normal people 1 week to recover from? What the hell's your problem? It wasn't like ankle sprain. I would have just. I don't know what I would have said. Something along
those lines. For anyone that doesn't know Frankel, by the way, he would say that. He 100% would say that. What would you say to Durant, real quick? This is actually fun. What would you say to Durant?
Before that game?
Yeah.
In terms of like actually trying to converse with him, or like just like things I would.
Yeah, no. You see, I know you.
I would have been like, let's go, Kevin. Huge game tonight. Great to see you back on the court. Stop taking games off. Like, you need to like pin Kyrie against the wall and make him get that stupid shot. Like, let's go. What are you doing? Something along those lines.
All right, Patty Mills. We're gonna keep going down. Just 2 more. What would you tell Patty? I love this. This is the best part of the podcast. What would you tell Patty?
I would generally want to know, Patty Mills, like, you're playing more minutes than you ever have. Like, how are you feeling? I don't think I've ever actually heard him talk. So I'd love to hear his voice. What's it like playing with Kevin? Just to like. I don't know. Just to hear it. Just to hear the Australian accent.
Last one, Paul Millsap.
You waste of space. Why are you still in the arena? Just leave. And now he's gonna leave.
Good say. Hey, can we add that to the podcast? A segment of just what you would say to certain players. Like maybe we'll do the Jets next week, and we'll do like the Super Bowl teams when we get there. But let's add that to the podcast, or try to add it on a weekly basis.
So let's move on to the National Football League postseason. Fun fact: in the past 3 playoffs, winning teams that win the game, are 27-3 ATS, which is pretty wild over the last 3 postseasons. So basically, if you pick a team to to the team that wins covers. It's pretty wild, pretty remarkable if you think about that. So if you're smart enough to predict who will win each game, you're probably going to win against the spread. So let's go to the first game. Bengals Titans. Derrick Henry is back. So here's my thought process in this game.
Okay.
I think the Titans will cover, but I cannot with any good faith bet against Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is what he's done to change the culture in Cincinnati in such a short amount of time is one of the most admirable things I could ever remember. That team hadn't won a playoff game in 30 years. They were, all the laughing stock of that league. And the fact that he goes up there in year 2 against likes of Lamar Jackson, Ben Roethlisberger, Baker Mayfield, and wins that division is absolutely remarkable. I have nothing but incredible respect for him, and I'll be rooting for him, but I just feel like his luck. Well, we're not against the Titans, but if he goes out there and wins, I will be the least surprised person on the planet Earth. Which is why I'm not betting the game, but if I were betting, I'd bet the Titans, and I would feel like an absolute fool for betting against Joe Burrow when he goes out there and lights him up.
Yeah, I'm not touching this game. If I was, I'd bet the Bengals money line just because I think they can win, but the Titans beat the good teams this year, and they stunk against the bad teams, and they're healthy. And that bye week,
besides the Jets,
they lost to the Jets.
Yes, they did. The Jets beat the Titans this year.
That's what I'm saying. The Titans beat the good teams.
Oh, right. They beat the good teams. Yeah.
And they lose to the bad teams. Yes. And now in the playoffs, there's no more bad teams. So I think them having the bye week to get A.J. Brown healthy again, to get Derrick Henry back, to get their offensive line healthy, Kevin Byard on the back end was banged up a little bit, to get him healthy. I think they're the better team overall. And Cincinnati barely beat Las Vegas. Like there's a case in it. They should have lost that game, despite how well Joe Burrow played for the most part. So I think Tennessee wins. And if that's the case, they're probably going to cover a 3-point spread. But I think just as far as the money goes, I think Cincinnati absolutely could win. And I'd take them on the money line. They're plus 150 last I saw. So, 1.5 return on investment. I also like the over in this game. I think that is
plus 160 in the over 47.5.
Yeah. So I would take the Bengals and the over if I was making picks, but this game scares me because, like you said, Joe Burrow's 7-0 in elimination games with 27 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Like, I'm not betting against that guy, especially when it's Ryan Tannehill on the other sideline under center. Like, the quarterback matchup favors Cincinnati. The rest of things favor Tennessee, and I just kind of like Vrabel in this situation at home, but I don't feel confident with that whatsoever. It would not shock me if Cincinnati won.
Vrabel is the clear-cut coach of the year. There's no argument for anybody else. What he did with that team to finish as the top seed in the conference with Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, with the injuries they dealt with, Derrick Henry playing half the year, Julio Jones only catching like one touchdown all regular season, A.J. Brown missing a ton of time. With the way he gets those guys to believe is absolutely amazing. He's my favorite coach in the league, and I can't get enough of Mike Vrabel. I think he's an absolute superstar. Bills Chiefs. This line was at 2.5 in favor of the Chiefs. Went down to 1.5. And what this tells me, Mike, is hammer the Chiefs. That nobody believes in us team. Patrick Mahomes is still there. I just feel like this line should be 3, and it's 1.5, and I'm going to hammer the Chiefs. But listen, so here's the other side. I think if the Bills win this game, they lose next week. I just think that this is the Bills Super Bowl, but I don't know. My gut says Chiefs, but I have no idea.
I'm also going to take the Chiefs, and I take a money line. 1.5 does nothing for me. Like what? Like the chance of this being a 1-point game.
But you do 1.5 because it's minus 110 as opposed to minus 130. I mean, what are the chances they win by? I mean, you would think they're going to win 31-30? Like, come on.
No, so I take the money line.
All right, do what you want. But yeah, if that makes you feel a little better, that's fine.
But either way,
I did get screwed over. I did bet. I had a teaser earlier in the year of like Packers minus 1.5 was one of them, and they won by 1 point. I think it was one of those. I think it was against the Ravens where they 2-point conversion, which completely screwed me. It was a Ravens 2-point conversion that screwed me out of a bet, which I was raged over.
Yeah, those are the worst. No, I like the Chiefs too. You mentioned this being the Bills Super Bowl. I think last week was the Bills Super Bowl. At home, in front of Bills Mafia, against the Patriots, against Bill Belichick. It was 1-1 on the season. That was kind of the official passing of the guard in my mind. And Buffalo played literally the perfect game. Buffalo could not have played better if they tried, if they wanted. It could have been rookie on Madden, and Josh Allen couldn't have done what he did against that New England secondary. 5 touchdowns, 4 incompletions. He threw for 300 plus, ran for 50. You've heard the stats. They didn't punt. 7 straight touchdowns that ended with a touchdown. That was the perfect game. And I compare it in a way to Michigan beating Ohio State earlier in this year. And that was their Super Bowl. Michigan had to beat Ohio State. We want to prove we belong. We want to prove we're with the big boys. They come back, they beat Iowa the next week in the Big Ten championship. And they come play Georgia. They got smoked. And I think these two teams are very even. I think Kansas City's been on this level before and knows what it takes to win this deep in the postseason. It's in Arrowhead. And I just have a feeling that despite the fact I think it's going to be a great game and a close game, it does worry me a little bit that Buffalo has already played the peak of their powers. And it's really difficult to replicate a performance like that.
Exactly.
And I have more faith that Kansas City can reach that peak this Saturday or this Sunday. This is a Sunday game, right?
Sunday game, yep.
Yeah. This Sunday, than Buffalo repeating what they did last Saturday night.
Right. One of the Bill Simmons manifesto things is beware of the team that looked so great the week before. And Buffalo, literally, as you mentioned, played the perfect game. And to expect them to be perfect again is highly unreasonable. So I love the Chiefs as well, which means the Bills probably win. 49ers, Packers. What's crazy about this, so Rodgers has never beaten the 49ers in the playoffs in his career. He's 0-3 against them, the team that passed on him in the draft. It's a whole narrative. If I were to bet this game, I'd bet the under. I have no idea which. I probably take the Packers plus the points and the under is how I bet this game. I think it's going to be a close game, probably a field goal game. But Rodgers has to make it a Super Bowl this year. Because I don't know how many more chances he's going to get to make it this far with this, but he's got to get to at least 2 Super Bowls. He's one of the best quarterbacks this generation, and he's running out of time, and he should easily have gone to more than 1 Super Bowl. And it has to happen for him. Otherwise, all these MVPs, all these, everything that he's, stood for and, championed or whatever, and all the controversy he's led in Green Bay is going to really, really come back to, I think, bite him in the butt if he doesn't get the Super Bowl this year. I think Green Bay wins, but 5.5 to me is too many points. San Francisco with Deebo Samuel is an absolute force. Kyle Shanahan, the way he's been able to construct that offense where you have no idea on any given play where Deebo's going for receiver, whether it's going to be running back, and George Kittle and Ayuk, and they have this other guy, number 15, Jennings, who I've never heard of, but is playing a huge role for that team. They are one of the most, I think probably the single most unpredictable offense right now in the playoffs. Just on any given play, you have no idea what's coming. But I think Rodgers leads them to victory.
I'm glad you like the Niners here because I love the Packers. If it was 45 degrees or 40 degrees, I'd love the Packers minus the points. But the cold weather actually helps Green Bay because I think Jimmy's thumb is an issue, and it's harder to grip the ball in cold weather. It's going to be extra hard for him to grip the ball in cold weather with 4.5 fingers, especially on the throwing hand with the thumb. That's going to be difficult for him. Another thing I really like about the Packers in this matchup, besides the fact that they're getting Zadarius Smith and Jair Alexander back for this game, who haven't played the second half of the season, those are 2 elite defenders, is the comment that Troy Aikman made following the Cowboys game last Saturday in regards to CeeDee Lamb. And he said the Cowboys got too complicated. They had CeeDee Lamb one-on-one coverage throughout the majority of the game, and they tried to run these crazy routes and spread the ball to all their weapons, and they got too complicated. When in Aikman's mind, had they just fed the ball to CeeDee Lamb, he could have had 10 catches in the first half for 100 yards and just kind of dink and dunk him to death. I don't think that happens with Rodgers and Adams. If they play off Adams and try to one-on-one him, Rodgers will go to him without hesitation, and that connection is the most unstoppable receiver-quarterback connection we've seen in the NFL in a decade now. I mean, those two literally know exactly what the other's thinking at any given time on the field, and they never miss. His accuracy to Adams on the outside is unreal. And I'm not sure what you're getting from Nick Bosa. I'm not sure what you're getting from Fred Warner. They're both supposed to play, is what the reports say, but coming off a concussion, coming off a foot injury, are we sure they're going to be at their all-pro self? They got Bakhtiari back for Green Bay. It's in Lambeau Field. The cold weather, I do think, benefits the Packers just in the sense that Jimmy G's thumb may be an issue. I know San Francisco runs the ball better, but I think this Packers team is coming together, getting healthy at the right time, coming off the bye with the added pressure too. And let me say this last point. No one likes being the villain more than Aaron Rodgers. And you saw LeBron kind of embrace that role eventually in Miami. And when he finally did and said, screw it, I don't care what the outside world thinks. I'm going to put my head down. I'm going to post people up. I'm going to bully ball you and just dominate. He won 2 championships. And I think Rodgers has fully incorporated being the villain into his mantra. And he knows that going out and winning a Super Bowl this season after the whole immunized debacle, I still can't say it, immunized debacle would be the ultimate stamp on his quote unquote villain campaign. And I expect him to come out and just dominate. And the last thing, I don't trust San Francisco to put away leads. You saw them be up, dominate the first half. They couldn't put away the Cowboys last week. If you can't put away Aaron Rodgers, I don't like your chances to win. That's a guy you have to make a 10-point game, a 20-point game. You can't settle for field goals. I like Green Bay a lot in this matchup.
All right, we'll see. I think the cold weather is really a deterrent to Rodgers' Super Bowl aspirations because he hasn't gotten there. And I think the playing 2-degree weather just doesn't help that. It's supposed to be high flying offense. But last game, Rams Buccaneers, this line went from 3 to 2.5, I believe, just on Friday. So the Rams are inching a little closer here. The Rams looked great last week. Stafford looks like a cup, and Odell is, the redemption tour is in full swing. I just think the Buccaneers are too beat up. I think, with Fournette's status up in the air, with 2 offensive linemen down, Wirfs not being there is a massive blow. No, obviously no Godwin, no Antonio Brown. I just feel like Brady is great, and we've seen in the past him, do a lot with a little. But I just feel like, with his age and, not the fact that Aaron Donald's going to go up against, offensive line that's not 100%, that is just not a recipe you want for Tampa Bay at all. And I can see this being a case where the Rams are in Brady's face the entire game, and he is really rattled. And Stafford, as long as he doesn't, screw it up and throw 3 interceptions, which could happen. And maybe last week was the hurdle that he needed to get over in order to get, back on track here and, get on a little run. But with, Cam Akers looking great, and Sony Michel and, Kupp and Odell, I really like where the Rams offense is at right now. I feel like you could put Jalen Ramsey on Mike Evans. It'll take him out of the game and just be physical enough with Gronk to take him out. I feel like that's the recipe to stop that offense. And I just feel like when I look at that and I look to see the way this game could shape up, I really like the Rams on the money line, and that's my play.
I do too. And once again, that scares me. I think the offensive line point's the biggest point. Your center's hurt. Your right tackle's hurt. You have a backup center try and block Aaron Donald. Up the middle, Brady's arch nemesis, pressure from the middle. That's the tough matchup. Tristan Wirfs came back and played last week, and I do not understand why he came back in the game. They had already had the game won already. Sit out, get healthy.
Did he finish that game?
I don't know if he finished, but he did come back in at some point when they were up, I think 24-0 at that. At that point, Tristan, sit out and recover. And he's going against Leonard Floyd and Von Miller. And if you're not on your A game against those two, it could be a long day for Brady. And I think the point about putting Ramsey on Evans, because he's one of the few cornerbacks in the league who's physical enough to match up with Mike Evans, negates him. And then you just deal with Gronk and a bunch of unproven guys. Now, this could be the game where Brady, dinks and dunks his way to 260 yards and 2 touchdowns and just takes everything underneath and lets his playmakers kind of run with it. But they don't have their best playmakers. Antonio Brown's gone, Chris Godwin's gone, and these are a bunch of unproven guys. So on one hand, you have Brady, the ultimate playoff veteran with more experience than half the NFL combined, throwing to guys who have never been on this stage compared to a Rams team that was built for this year, but has Matt Stafford at quarterback. So you're going to bet against Tom Brady and put money on Matt Stafford? Yeah, I am. I actually like the Rams on the money line too. I just think that offensive line is too much of a question mark, and this Rams team is built for this exact kind of performance.
Yeah, I disagree at all. But my one theory here is that they've delayed the airing of the 10th episode of Man in the Arena. I don't know if you watched any of it.
I have not. I'm waiting for it all to come out.
Right. So the last episode is not going to come out until it was supposed to come out this week, but now it's not coming out until the spring, which leads me to believe that Brady announced his retirement. Whenever the season does end in Man in the Arena, and that's how this thing will end. So whether that's with the Super Bowl champion,
that conspiracy on Twitter. I kind of love it.
It's got to be it. So it's either going to end with this week or Brady's going to end with the Super Bowl. Listen. If you're asking me to pick Brady versus Stafford, I pick Brady every single time. But when the whole body of work, I just feel like the Rams are way more healthy, way more loaded at their skill positions right now, and I just feel like they're going to win, which means Brady's. Like I said, every time I thought something in the opposites happened, I went big on Ohio State against Michigan early in the year, lost. Went big against Alabama against Georgia, lost. So for what it's worth, I'm usually wrong on these things, but that's the way I see it going. But that'll do it for this edition of the Lucas podcast. We'll see you all next week when David Ortiz makes it to the Hall of Fame and Alex Rodriguez does not.